Welcome back to the Adam Schefter Podcast, a very special Veterans Day edition Adam Schefter Podcast as we look back to Week 10 and begin to look ahead to Week 11. To help us do that, Ty Schmidt has Veterans Day duties today, and so we are going to have my trusted and superb producer, Dan Stanczyk, filling for Ty Schmidt for this week's six-pack. Dan?
Sheffy, thank you. It's great to be with you, as always. Ty will be back next week, as you alluded to. Just a quick thank you to all of our veterans, past and present. We know freedom isn't free. And we're in the season, Shefty. It is, like, I cannot believe we're into Week 11, and things are getting crazy.
Hey, before we get ahead to topic number one, Dan, on Sunday Countdown, we had veterans in the audience for the very first time, and it was outstanding. It meant so much to our crew to have them in attendance. We were so humbled to have them there, and they brought such an energy that's ordinarily not there on a Sunday morning. Sunday mornings are always packed with adrenaline, but it was a different kind of energy. And to see what it meant to my teammates and to see what it meant to it was an unbelievable experience to have 150 service people in the audience. It was something that I would imagine we're going to be doing at our new offices now every single Veterans Day to honor those who served and sacrificed. It was awesome to see. Anyway, I wanted to point that out.
That is incredible. A special shout out to my brother-in-law, Nick Shutter, who is a former Marine. And the Marines just celebrated their 250th birthday. But we have some football to dive into, Shefty. And yesterday, the Giants fired head coach Brian Daboll as we get to topic number one of this week's six-pack. He was 20-40-1 in 3+ seasons. They curiously kept Joe Schoen around to lead the search for the new head coaching job. What do you make of this Giants opening?
Well, first of all, I was interested to see how the Monday Night Countdown crew went after Joe Schoen. That was pretty interesting to me, and that seemed to be the reaction across the league on Monday after Brian Daboll was let go, because Brian Daboll and Jackson Dart had forged a strong relationship by all accounts. Brian Daboll essentially is somebody that has helped elevate Josh Allen. Jackson Dart was somebody that was evolving. The issue, I think, was this. They kept running the quarterback. And he had been evaluated 4 separate times this season for concussions. 4 separate evaluations. You can't do that to your franchise quarterback. It's time to pull back a little bit. You have to let him be who he is. But I think that became an issue on top of the fact that there were 4 games on the road in which the team had double-digit leads and lost all 4. That is something that you can't do. So when you have a team that's blowing games, can't hold on to leads, quarterbacks getting hurt, I think ownership lost faith in the head coach. They decided to make a change. Look, this is going to be a desirable job. You're talking about what usually is a stable organization, even though it hasn't been in recent years, a blue blood organization where you're in the New York market. They have a quarterback. They have Malik Neighbors. They have Cam Scatterbo. They have a lot of talent on the defense side of the football. So that's going to become a desirable job for whichever head coach they go after. People are throwing out names now. I just don't know how much that means right now. We could throw out names, and inevitably we're going to be excluding certain candidates. There are certain coaches out there with New Jersey connections. Anthony Campanile, the Jaguars defensive coordinator. Jeff Hafley, the Packers defensive coordinator. They have Jersey connections. Steve Spagnuolo and Antonio Pierce coached for the team. But this is going to be a long, exhaustive search. And when they hire somebody, my guess and sense is it's somebody that we probably haven't even brought up in the end. That would be my guess in the end, because it's going to be a long search. But they became the second team to fire their head coach. I think here's the thing. Everybody could feel it coming after that game. Everybody could feel it coming. Checked in with the Giants, told nothing, and then all of a sudden, lo and behold, about 12:40 on Monday afternoon, they dismissed Brian Daboll. And Brian Daboll will go on to coach elsewhere, although the Buffalo Bills said it won't be for us this season. We're happy with Joe Brady. We're not doing that. But you could see Brian Daboll as a potential replacement for Joe Brady. If Joe Brady gets a head coaching job in college or in the pros, that's certainly plausible to see. So we'll see how it works out, but Brian Daboll becomes head coach number 2 to be fired this season. And I would think that will probably get 3 or 4 more by the end of the year, at the end of the year.
Chef, you mentioned a bunch of those candidates, a couple of the names with Jersey connections. Don't you think that this hire has to be someone on the offensive end to sync up with Jackson Dart, or is that not?
I think that's a mistake. I think ideally you'd like to do that, but you wanna get in a great leader, somebody who elevates the organization. Look, when the Pittsburgh Steelers hired Mike Tomlin for Ben Roethlisberger, how'd that work out?
It's a different era, though, back then. I mean, Tomlin's been there forever.
Okay.
This is the new NFL where you got to have a great offense.
Well, again, we can go through all the hires, and
Yeah.
I think the miss rate is just as high for offensive guys as it is defensive guys. In a perfect world, absolutely, you want somebody that's gonna work with Jackson Dart, and I guarantee you that's their priority. But if one of those names I mentioned with Jersey ties, Jeff Hafley, Anthony Campbell comes in, and they're so wowed by the guy, and he's got
Yeah.
a quarterback guru. By the way, the New England Patriots, they hired Mike Vrabel. Wouldn't you have said, boy, they got to get somebody to work with Drake
Great point. It's a great point. No, you're right.
And by the way, he had Josh McDaniels waiting in the wings, worked out perfectly. Josh McDaniels' family still
Yeah.
lived in the Foxborough area. But no matter what they do, no matter who the hire is, making sure that Jackson Dart is comfortable is priority one for that team.
For sure. For sure. Quickly before we move on, were you surprised they kept Shane?
I think here's the deal. That'll be up to the head coaches that they hire, whether they want to keep him or not.
Yeah, Shefty, I got to say, though, as a Giants fan, I was a bit surprised that they did keep Shane. I mean, if you look at his draft history, it hasn't been great. He's got a few hits, notably this year with Jackson Dart, Abdul Carter, and Cam Scadabo. Neighbors from the year before was also a good hit, but he's got some really bad misses. I mean, Evan Neal in 2022, the second pick he ever made as the Giants GM, was just a total whiff. Deontay Banks in 2020, actually the whole 2023 draft was just a complete whiff. Like Deontay Banks in the first round was terrible. John Michael Smith's been very underwhelming at center 2023. He was a second round pick. He traded up for Jalen Hyatt in the third round. He's been miserable. So I mean, I can't in good faith think like he did a great job and Daboll's the one that screwed it up. I understand like they had some leads in games this year. The management wasn't awesome. I thought the nail in the coffin for Daboll was actually that Denver game where they were up 19-0 in the fourth quarter and ended up losing 33-32. But if you look at Shane, a couple other terrible decisions. I mean, he chose to keep Daniel Jones over Saquon Barkley in 2023. You could, maybe hindsight 2020 in this one, but then Barkley has a record year in Philly in 2024. Now Daniel Jones is having a record year in Indy in 2025. Like that is on Joe Schoen, as much as you want to say he made the right choice there, choosing the quarterback over the running back. But no one was really a believer in Daniel Jones at that time, but they won a playoff game and they felt like they had to pay him. But I think that is a miss. Like you look at that and that is a miss. So I don't understand why you're giving him the reins to pick the next head coach. Like, I don't think he fully deserved it based on his full track record. And he hired Brian Daboll, a guy he was in the office with in Buffalo for 4 straight years, and it didn't work. And now you're saying, all right, he's 0 for 1 on head coaching hires. Let's give him another chance. To me, it just doesn't make sense. That's just my opinion. But we'll move now to topic number 2 of this week's Six Pack. Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow officially returned to practice on Monday in a limited capacity as the team opened his 21-day window to return from injured reserve. Burrow, of course, suffered a turf toe injury in week 2 since he has lost 5 of 6 in the games that he has missed. What can you tell us about his expected return?
Okay, well, Joe Burrow has got to get back to practice here and see how his foot is feeling during practice, eluding rushers, how it feels simulating game conditions, and just as important, he has to feel how his foot is feeling after he gets done. How sore is it? Can he work through it? He's already done an incredible job to get to this point. By the way, I would have thought it was more likely than not that he wouldn't have played this year because I would have thought that their record was such that it wouldn't be worth bringing him back. It wouldn't make sense to bring him back. But that division has basically been flat. Nobody's pulled away. Nobody's impressed. And Joe Burrow has worked so hard to get back and has put himself in a position to play. And now it looks like he is going to play again. Now, again, I think he'd like to target that Thanksgiving night game, which is at Baltimore, to come back.
It's a big one.
I personally think the more realistic target is the next week at Buffalo. I think the game at Buffalo is the game that we should circle for a potential Joe Burrow return. But you also have to wonder, okay, if the Bengals lose these next 3 games, does it even make sense to put him out there if they're out of the division race? If they can stay in the division race, if they could find a way to win a game or 2 here, and the division doesn't pull away from them, then I think Buffalo, at Buffalo, Joe Burrow is the game that I'd have circled on my calendar to see if he can make it back by then, which credit to him for working as hard as he has to put himself in the position he is to potentially be back for that game.
Yeah, and I understand why he wants to get back for that Ravens game on Thanksgiving, because that one is certainly going to matter. If winning the division is probably their only path to get to the playoffs, they're going to need that game for sure. So I understand that's the target. We'll see if he is able to make it. Let's go to topic number 3 of this week's Six Pack Shefty, and we have quite the MVP race shaping up. Matthew Stafford just became the first quarterback to throw for 4 more touchdowns with no interceptions in 3 straight games. Jonathan Taylor went to Germany, ripped off 244 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, and yet, Shefty, neither of them are favored to win MVP right now. Your current betting favorite is Patriots' second-year quarterback, Drake Maye. How do you view this race right now?
Well, to me, when I look at it, I think Drake may turn out to win the award, but Matthew Stafford has thrown 20 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in his last 7 games. 20 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Matthew Stafford is playing at a higher level than ever before. Drake Maye has the Patriots in first place. Drake Maye has the Patriots in a position nobody would have ever have thought. But Jonathan Taylor, how does Jonathan Taylor today, if the voting's done today, after 10 weeks of the season, how does Jonathan Taylor not win this award when he has 4 hat-trick games, 4 games in which he's rushed for 3 touchdowns? Like, to me, that's pretty simple and easy. Drake Maye and Matthew Stafford will challenge. Now, here is what the quarterbacks have going for them, Dan. And here's why it's going to be tough even now, as much as he deserves it, for Jonathan Taylor to win the MVP award. First of all, quarterbacks have won the MVP in each of the last 12 years. And we've seen some incredible performances from Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and other running backs. No running back has come close to winning that award the last 12 years. Not only that, there are 50 voters for the MVP. I am not one. There are 50. Over the last 7 years, and the 350 ballots that have been cast over the last 7 years, the only single ballot not cast for a quarterback was for Cooper Kupp in the year that he caught all those passes for the Rams.
Triple Crown.
So not only has a running back not won the MVP the last 12 years, but there hasn't even been a running back who has gotten a vote in at least the last 7 years. So it's very hard for a running back to do it. Saying that, Jonathan Taylor is more than deserving right now, but saying that, there's still 8 more weeks in the season to go to play out.
I think Taylor's only chance. You're right. No running backs run it since Adrian Peterson 2012, but that's not too long ago. It has become a quarterback award. If Taylor breaks the single season rushing record and the Colts are the 1 seed in the AFC, I think he wins the award. I think he needs both of those and he'll win it. But other than that, I don't think he has any chance.
Dan, I don't disagree with that. I think that's a great mark to shoot for and a great way to look at it. Again, he's fighting off great competition, and he's fighting off history as well.
Yeah. All right, let's move to topic number 4 of this week's Six Pack Shefty, and we'll stay in the AFC for this portion. And the AFC is upside down from what people thought. The Bills, Chiefs, and Ravens, who are quarterbacked by the past 3 MVPs, are currently 6th, 8th, and 10th in the AFC right now with 8 games to go. How crazy is that, Shefty?
Just think about that for a moment. Bills, Chiefs, Ravens, the 3 teams that I would think most everybody picked to go to the Super Bowl, right?
And had 1, 2, 3 like easy in the AFC.
In any of those orders, 2 of those 3 teams would not be in the playoffs if the playoffs were to start today. They would be the 6th, 8th, and 10th seeds. And that tells you how open the conference is, how even it is right now. All of a sudden, we've got teams like Indianapolis. We've got teams like New England. We've got teams like Denver and the Chargers. We've got these teams in position that very few people saw coming. The NFC somehow has evolved into the stronger conference. That's been the conference that's been incredibly impressive here. And when you look at it, there are more teams that you feel better about winning the Super Bowl than you do in the AFC. But the perennial powerhouses in the AFC, the teams we're used to seeing up there every year, Kansas City with Mahomes, Buffalo with Josh Allen, Baltimore with Lamar Jackson, only one of them would make the playoffs today, and that tells you how wide open the AFC is this year.
Do you want to know what's crazy? If you had to guess right now, don't you think all three are going to get in, though? Like, they're not in position right now, but if you had to guess.
It's great. I think Kansas City's getting in. Yeah, I'd be shocked if they didn't. I think Baltimore's going to win the AFC North.
Right.
And Buffalo
But the quarterbacks matter that much, and, like, they have the best three quarterbacks. Two of the three aren't in right now, but, like, if push came to shove and we had to guess right now, yeah, all three are getting in.
I agree with that. You're not picking against Mahomes, Allen, and Jack. You're not doing that.
Can't.
So they'll be there. They're not there now. It's fun to talk about going into week 11. It's interesting to talk about going in. But we know where they're going to be in week 18.
That's right. They may not have home games in the playoffs, though. So that could be a factor.
They're going to make their road to the Super Bowl that much longer. And you count on those guys in the postseason that most of them have come through. But the challenge this year to them, as we look ahead, might be greater than ever before.
That is for sure, and we can't wait to see how that all plays out. Let's get to topic number 5 of this week's six-pack, Shefty. After a Week 9 home loss to the Vikings, Lions head coach Dan Campbell took matters into his own hands and assumed offensive play-calling duties from first-year offensive coordinator John Morton. The Lions went out, scored 44 points, avenged last season's playoff loss to the Commanders. What do you make of Campbell taking the reins of this offense?
He had no choice. He had to do this. Like, if you watch this offense the week before at home against Minnesota, it was stagnant. It was unimaginative. Jahmyr Gibbs was used as a blocker. He wasn't on the field half the time. He wasn't getting the ball. Every time I looked up as they're trying to come from behind. Well, no disrespect to David Montgomery, who's incredible. Like, reliable, dependable, the kind of guy you want on your team. But Jahmyr Gibbs might be the most explosive player in football, and he wasn't getting the football when it mattered. And I'm watching this, and I'm saying there's no way that they're going to continue doing this. And, by the way, I think there was a version of this that happened after the opener in Green Bay when Johnny Morton was the offensive coordinator, came in to replace Ben Johnson. They went to Green Bay in week 1, and remember they got hammered and the offense looked terrible? Mm-hmm. Well, the next week, Dan Campbell got more involved in the offense. Now, I don't know how that played out from week 2 to week 10, other than Johnny Morton was the offensive coordinator. But it is undeniable that early on, Dan Campbell got a little bit more involved, and then maybe he kind of stepped back a little bit, I'm surmising, and then all of a sudden, in Washington, following the loss to the Vikings at home, all of a sudden, Dan's got the play chart and the headset, and right then and there, he's calling the plays, like not even disguising it, not masking it. Then, look, there's a role still for Johnny Morton on that offense, and there's a role for Dan Campbell, but it is Dan Campbell's offense. It's not Ben Johnson's offense. It's not Johnny Morton's offense. It's Dan Campbell's offense, and it's Dan Campbell's team, and Dan Campbell should be doing what he's doing, because when he's calling the plays, when that offense is performing like that, I could make the argument, as good as some of these other teams are, that the Lions might be not only the best team in the NFC, but the best team in football.
Now, Campbell's done this in the past. He did this in 2021. He assumed play calling duties from Anthony Lynn, and then the next year Anthony Lynn was gone, and they hired Ben Johnson. So does this portend bad news for Johnny Morton?
Well, I don't think it's good for him. And it'll be interesting to see, again, if this is a Johnny Morton thing. Like, is he comfortable in the background helping Dan, assisting him in that role? Is he not comfortable? I don't know Johnny Morton like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly plenty of coordinators who aren't actually calling the offensive plays. So it's not like an unforeseen position. But just with that, the other thing too about this, Shefty, is like the Lions offense, as sputtering as it was, as un-Lions-like as it was, they were still second in the league in points. Yeah. So Johnny Morton's got to be looking like, hey guys, like we're scoring all these points, but the identity was off.
Well, they were second in the league in points, but there were a couple of huge games. They had the one game at home where I think skews that. If you watch the offense consistently, it wasn't running the way it should. It wasn't running the right way. They were not using Jahmyr Gibbs as much as they should. They were not using Jameson Williams as much as they should. It was not the explosive, dangerous Lions. Yeah, they might be second in the league in points, but anybody who's watched that offense regularly knows it hasn't been as consistent as it's been in the past. I also thought it was interesting this past week that you're starting to see the pressure of the season, the stakes involved get to these teams. Dan Campbell recognizes the offense isn't performing the way he wants in Detroit, so he takes over as the offensive coordinator and play caller. Dan Quinn in Washington sees that his defense is being run all over, being trampled on. He takes over as defensive coordinator from Joe Witt Jr. We see in Cleveland, a lot of questions there. Kevin Stefanski surrenders the play-calling duties this past week to Tommy Rees, who calls the plays Browns don't win anyway. So whenever this happens, look, it happened in Tennessee earlier this year, and a week later they fire Brian Callahan. I just think whenever you see one of these changes, you start saying, what's going on in Detroit? What's going on in Washington?
You're doing your Windhorst, Shefty. You're doing the Windhorst.
Yeah. What's going on everywhere across the league, Dad?
The Lions one is interesting, though, because it was one of our preseason storylines to watch, is how the Lions would perform after losing both coordinators, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, both getting head coaching jobs. And they've been okay, but now, like you said, the pressure's getting there. I think Campbell wanted to put it on the Commanders a little bit, too, after they knocked them off in last year's postseason. But let's get to our sixth and final topic of this week's Six Pack, Shefty, and it is power rankings time. Who do you have in your top 6 in the NFL through 10 weeks?
Okay, we're going to go. It's going to be heavy NFC, but I think that's the way it should be right now. In the number 1 slot, Dan, in the weekly power rankings, heading into week 11, the Los Angeles Rams. Any objections to that?
I think it's Rams or Seahawks. Ty had the Seahawks number 1 last week, so you could go either way, and they're playing each other this upcoming weekend in LA, so I don't think you can go wrong with either of those NFC West teams in there.
And that's going to be a big topic of conversation on the podcast Thursday going into week 11. But I got the Rams at 1, and I got the Seahawks at number 2. Watching Seattle, defense is ferocious, offense is explosive. The Rams and Seahawks are really strong teams, and they hold the top 2 spots in my weekly power rankings. Number 3, we're going to go with the New England Patriots, who go into Tampa, beat the Buccaneers, hold first place in the AFC East. I think this past weekend might have been the weekend that the AFC East was won. Now, I know the Patriots still have business to do and games to win, and Mike Vrabel would not be happy if I said that, but I think when we look back on this season, this past weekend when the Patriots beat the Buccaneers and the Bills lost to the Miami Dolphins, that will be the weekend when we say the AFC East was won. In the number 4 spot, we're going to go with the aforementioned Detroit Lions. When Dan Campbell's calling that offense, watch out. They are a dangerous team, and they are, in my mind, as good as the Rams and Seahawks are, and they're the top 2. The Lions might just be the best team in the NFC. We'll go with the Philadelphia Eagles in the 5 spot, going into Green Bay on Monday night. Pull off a tough victory, and you could already see how much better that defense may be with Jalen Phillips playing edge and the pass rush that they can generate. The Philadelphia Eagles, number 5. And number 6, the team I would never rule out. Don't want to leave them off the 6-pack. Don't care that they're not in first place. Don't care that they're not in the playoffs today. The Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. So my 6 going into week 11, Rams, Seahawks, Patriots, Lions, Eagles, Chiefs. I like that list.
It's very good. We have very similar lists, 5 of the 6, just one team different. Because Ty had the Seahawks number 1, I'm putting Seahawks 1 as well last week, just as I'm in Ty's spot here. Seahawks 1, I have Rams 2. The team that you didn't have in your top 6 that I have 3rd is the Colts. Big win in Germany there. I still think they are a contender in the AFC. The Patriots at 4. I have the Eagles at 5, and the Chiefs, like you said, I have the Chiefs at 6 for the same reasons you mentioned. I don't think you can realistically do a top 6 power rankings and not put them in there. Like if you're going to pick the 6 teams that you think would win the Super Bowl, they are certainly in the top 6. So the Chiefs just grandfathered in, I guess, to the 6th spot there for sure. So for me, it is Seahawks, Rams, Colts, Patriots, Eagles, and Chiefs.
And Dan, I know we're going to get to this on Thursday, but we are a few days out of what is going to be a great week 11.
What a slate. You guys talked about the substandard slate a couple weeks back.
This is slate. Okay, let me read
incredible.
Thursday night, Jets at New England. Then Sunday, in order, Washington at Miami and Madrid. Okay,
all right. It's
whatever.
rough start. Those first two, rough start, but it's okay.
A great time to watch Sunday Countdown on Sunday morning. The rest of the slate, Carolina at Atlanta, okay. Tampa at Buffalo. Sign me up.
Huge. Yep.
Chargers at Jacksonville. Interesting game. Chicago at Minnesota. Like that one a lot. Green Bay at the Giants. We'll see how Mike Kafka does in his first game. Cincy at Pittsburgh as the Bengals try to stay alive for Joe Burrow. Houston at Tennessee. San Francisco at Arizona. Okay. But here's where we get the juice. Seattle at the Rams. In the
game of the week.
5. Can you believe that's not the late window game? I cannot believe.
That's amazing.
I can't wait.
They have another good option, though. But I mean, I think anyone who really likes football can't wait for that one. I think that's number one on the list. But the casual fan, they probably want to see the Chiefs, so I get it.
Baltimore, Cleveland, okay. Kansas City at Denver. Can't wait. Sign me up for that one. Detroit at Philly, Sunday night. Can't wait for that one.
I know.
And then Monday night, Dallas at Vegas. Again, Monday night, short straw a little bit. That's the way.
What a week, though. What a week we have to preview on Thursday's pod.
What a week, and what a great job you did today filling in for Ty Schmidt. We'll be back in this spot again on Thursday to look ahead to that incredible slate with further insights on some of the most compelling matchups we've seen so far this season. Until then, thank you, Dan Stanczyk. Thank you, Ben Smith. Thank you, the listener, for tuning into another Adam Schefter Podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Adam Schefter Podcast. We'll be back in this spot on Thursday. Have a great week, everybody.